Welcome back to Zero Gravity Live, your weightless weekly tech talk podcast, bringing all the latest discussions right to you. Thanks as always for joining our show. We're sponsored by Object First, and we make Object First OOPI. Stands for out of the box immutability. It's the best storage for Veeam, and I'm joined by my two besties. Oh, Matt's got it. Matt's got it all. I think all three of us got it in different generations, right?
Yeah.
This episode, but joined by my two besties, Matt and Sterling. Matt, how you doing this week?
I'm good, guys. How about y'all?
Doing great.
Sterling, how you
Doing great. Another beautiful day. Another beautiful day, man. You kidding me?
Yeah, it's been a fun week so far, man. And this is kind of a nostalgic topic we're going to be talking about today. Definitely got some memories.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's we were too excited. We started talking about it before the show started. So I am excited to get in. And we were also talking about how I think we've talked about every single object in our office. So we're gonna save that segment from when we have guests on that have more unique things than we do. But the question of the day, as it is every Tuesday, is where are you watching from? We want to know where you're tuning in and watching the show from. We already know if you're watching on YouTube or LinkedIn, we spy. We secretly see where you're tuning in from there. But we want to know geographically where in the world you are watching from. Let us know in the comment section. We'll give you a shout out. But let's get into the topic of the day, right? Forgive me. VMware Explore starts next week.
Yes.
You know what they say: if it ain't broke, change the name. So I actually found.
Legit.
It starts next week, and you'd think there'd be quite a lot of buzz, but I was struggling to find information about what was going to go on there. But the number one article I found comes from Network World. Customer concerns loom as VMware Explore event approaches. And, they're just talking about the things that everyone already kind of knows and expects, a little tongue-in-cheek, our episode title with the Broadcom acquisition coming. But, I do want to show, they did some research in here. Wakefield surveyed 300 enterprise IT decision makers across various industries that use VMware and found that widespread apprehension among VMware users in the wake of Broadcom's acquisition. In fact, nearly all respondents, 99%, expressed concern, quote, reflecting a broad sentiment of unease across various industries and business sizes and executive levels. And the majority of respondents, 95%, perceived Broadcom's acquisition as disruptive to their IT strategy, with 46% considering it extremely or very disruptive. I thought that was a great stat to kind of kick off this conversation with, because I know we all have fond memories of VMworld or VMware Explore, but the current state of things, it's a little bleak. Gentlemen, what's the thought on this?
Oof. You want to hit that first, Matt?
I was going to say
potato.
I was going to say, I mean, for me, it's, you talk about nostalgic, and I remember when, I first joined, at Veeam back in 2012. At that time period, literally Veeam was out there at VMworld at the time, winning best new technology, best of show, all these awards at VMworld. And it was the event to go to, right? It was definitely the virtualization event. And when you looked at market share of hypervisors, it was the behemoth, the giant. Throughout the time there at Veeam, and we started seeing Hyper-V kind of make some moves, and, its first couple iterations were a little rocky, but then they started, getting it running like a well-oiled machine there. I'm sure you can appreciate that, Sterling, since it's Microsoft based. And, nowadays, fast forward to today, and you see all these different hypervisors coming out, and they were already coming out before this acquisition. So it's like, what do we think this is going to do to accelerate that adoption? You've got Nutanix with Acropolis and AHV. You've got, Red Hat. You've got all these different, Proxmox is the latest thing, right? So there's all these different varieties and flavors that you no longer have to stick to VMware, if you don't choose to. So I'm very interested to see how this show goes this year for sure.
Yeah. I was wondering if Anthony was going to start off with this, because we know VM Explorer, and we know the behemoth they've become. And Matt, you talked already pretty eloquently about it, how markets change and how our needs change and how, you sort of morph into that next thing that people need. Listen, we would be remiss if we didn't say that there is a bit of a changing of the guard going on right now. And sometimes, you sort of, how am I trying to say this? The everyone moves on and the tools evolve, or you sort of do it to yourself. And I think we saw a little bit of both with the Broadcom acquisition and also the plethora of tools. I was sharing with you guys right before we were kind of chatting before we went live, my very first VM World. It was VM World back then, and I knew nothing about virtualization at that time. I was working for a bank on the SE team, the engineering team, back in 2006, and it was pretty much just budding. It was kind of GSX, ESX before a lot of the sort of the Windows GUI sort of came in. And at that time, it was all about physical servers. You needed to stand up a new Exchange server or a new BES. BlackBerry Enterprise servers were big back then. You had to stand up individual
That's a name.
servers, right?
Yeah.
For each of these types of things. And virtualization changed that on its head. Instead of me having to go back to actually order another server, I could rip one up. Now, if anybody has ever done this back then, there was a mappy.dll that was on the Exchange server that could not exist on the BES server. And some people that didn't know put their BES server on the Exchange server and everything went down. Those were the types of sort of budding things that we went through back in the day, but it fundamentally changed how we thought about computing. And I think we're starting to see that again now in this new day and new age. Now, did the market turn or did they turn against the market? That's why I think it was very apropos that particular article that you put up there. But, just like Matt, when I started in the industry of the data management piece, we were heavily into virtualization at that time. I was at Social Security Administration before I joined Veeam. And then I went back to VMworld many years later, the 2011, 2012, when Matt and I were both there. And it was drastically different. At that point, adoption was mainstream, widespread. And they were already talking about new ways and almost getting into the cloud computing portion. So I know that was a bit of an anecdote, but it's crazy to see how things shift and change. And I think we're on the cusp of that right now.
Well, firstly, Mappy DLL and the BlackBerry server, like you threw a lot of words out there that like forced me to physically become younger again, which was weird. But everyone thought VMware was in trouble when AWS and Microsoft Azure started to really uptick in the market. I remember at the time, everyone's like, I don't know if VMware is going to make it. And what ended up happening was 60% of cloud architects or architectures had VMware inside of the cloud, right? So they're double billing, right? They're paying for VMware to run on AWS or Azure. So, I mean, like it's almost like a cockroach, right? You can't kill the thing. New technology comes out and they manage to survive the experience. And I'll share one more thing. They don't have much information about this, but I do remember last year with a big announcement of NVIDIA and VMware partnering up and doing, something together. This is the thing to watch for, I believe, when it comes to VMware Explorer 2025. I don't know what they're planning, but NVIDIA truly has an interesting leg up in the AI market because of their graphics chips and their CUDA processing. They're doing something. They don't really tease it here. So you really got to tune in and see to the session. But whatever they're cooking, I think could be that next thing that helps them survive this transition they're going through. Same way that they were able to survive cloud. Like this could be the thing, or it could be nothing. We don't really know. It doesn't say in the article. But when I was doing my research on the event coming up, this was the only thing I thought that's something I'm curious about. Want to know more?
That's interesting to me. I mean, honestly, this could almost be an episode in itself. You're right. What are they cooking up here? Part of me wanted to think. I believe his name is Hock Tan, right? The guy that is the CEO and owns or runs Broadcom. You have to think that he had to have something up his sleeve. I mean, you don't just take a multi-billion-dollar business and sort of what it seems like sort of dismantles it from the outside looking in. Wow, this could be that mic drop moment.
I'm very curious.
I look at that the same way because NVIDIA is going places. I mean, they've already got all kinds of, like you said, Anthony, all kinds of processing going on with machine learning and AI and just data mining and stuff like that, and just the whole GPU side of their business is really untapped, I think, to some degree with regards to this. So it'll be interesting to see how this what you're showing here evolves. And I'm with you, Sterling. I think there's a bigger picture and a bigger play because I mean VMware was dominant. I mean, there's so many VCPs in the world and it's everywhere. I mean, VMware is obviously still the market leader, still, has the large majority of market share, but
Yeah.
that's quickly diluting because of everything that's going on right now. So it's kind of interesting to see what's phase two with this whole project. Are they going to turn things around? Are they going to let that side of the business just naturally dissolve because they're focused on a different side of the business? I know the whole VDI and all kinds of other potential applications that they might be more focused on than traditional vSphere, might be their approach. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see it unfold. I have a feeling we'll get some sort of inclination based on what happens at VMware Explore, next
Yeah.
week.
There,
Because
I mean,
that's
there's
the elephant in the room, right? They can't not
Absolutely.
talk about it.
They have to. They have to
yes.
address that. They have to address that.
I'm very curious.
Anthony, one more thing on that really reminded me. You are right. VMware, it felt like that there was some double dippage going on there for a long time. I think people's first foray into running infrastructures in the cloud,
Mhm.
they couldn't imagine it without that abstraction layer. It was like, okay, well, let's just take everything we had on the premises and let's put it up there. So it
They couldn't
became
handle
that.
it. Yeah.
You're absolutely right. And though I knew that, I love how you put that because it was almost like you couldn't decouple it until we started to see things like first there was the cloud foundation and then there was just the hey, you want to just run this container? You know what I mean? And so it's very interesting, that move. I hadn't thought about that piece. Well said.
It's funny. I said we had nothing to share in our office. I will share this. So my wife just got a brand new graphics card, so I'm getting her old 3080 Ti. Which look at this thing. It
Yeah.
was like this. It's the size. It's bigger than my head, right?
Yep.
Her new card. So this is NVIDIA. I mean, it's an EVGA card, but like it's
Yeah.
an NVIDIA base. Is literally half the size of this thing.
Really?
More powerful, half the size. So that partnership, that could be something, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm very, very curious. Literally one generation later, half the size of a card. Like just mind blowing.
I remember those. You had to get a case big enough so you could even
Yes.
cram the
Oh,
thing
yeah.
in there.
We were very worried when we got it because that's a 3080 Ti, and now she's a
Yeah.
4070 Super. It's like the
Dang.
leap in power is insane, and literally half the size.
You know what, guys? This is weird. Not to go too much off on a tangent. Matt, you may remember this as well. Before Bitcoin, before all the mining and why everybody started buying up all the graphics cards, VMware started to get heavy into the GPU side of things. And it was actually using the GPU for certain types of additional cores that it could use for crunching. And when you said that, that actually just sort of clicked off something. Maybe there's more to it in that and how they even run their infrastructures.
I mean, that's kind of where my thought is. NVIDIA is a smart company. I don't
Very
see them
smart.
going anywhere but up and to the right. And I mean,
Yep.
you talked about the 3080. I've got about 8 3060 Ti's in there still just hashing away, doing their thing in the basement. But, it's untapped potential, I think. And I think that acquisition was obviously well planned. And they probably, like we all been saying, have a bigger strategy than we're just going to buy VMware and keep ESXi plugging along. There's probably more to it than that. So it'll be fun, to kind of watch this unfold.
Yeah, I know one thing. It's a lot of competition licking their chops right now.
That's right. That's
I mean,
right.
between the Proxmox and everyone thought Kubernetes was going to like take over the world.
Yeah.
But I don't think people were ready for the complexity, or it's not even the complexity. It's just the mind shift that is required to be good at Kubernetes.
Well, I think it's a use case problem too, right? Because containers
Yeah.
doesn't solve every use case.
No, it
There's
does
still
not.
very much a need for both, in certain capacity. So I think that was kind of my take on containers in general. A few years back, everybody's like, "Ooh, we can do away with this abstraction layer, and we can just have one operating system and all these applications." I'm like, "Yeah, that's great in certain applications, in certain use cases. In others, though, that's not the right tool for the job." So I definitely see virtualization staying around. But like you say, tons more competitors, tons more innovation, and you've got people, sadly, leaving in droves because of what's going on right now in the current climate. But there's also a learning curve, man, because
Mm,
I mean, Sterling, you're a Microsoft guy. Hyper-V and VMware could not be more separate and
so
different
true.
Yep.
with like
It is
the
so
way
true.
they look at virtualization and how you go and administer that type of stuff. So there's, everybody that's abandoning vSphere, there's a pretty decent little learning curve to pick up something just as adequate, just as powerful and be able to use it effectively. So
That's a
that's
good
that's
point.
another thing that I'm seeing personally is a lot of people are going out and getting different industry certs, different types of training. It used to be go get your VCP, right? Work towards your VCX, but now it's different strategy.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what's interesting is I wonder if Kubernetes containers will bridge that gap or just create new silos in that way. Because you're right. It seems like the tools made it easier, P to V, V to V, move between systems, but you still have to understand how that system works.
Yes.
In the beginning, Hyper-V had to have certain RDMs, right? Certain physical
Yep.
connections. And this other side had to have something else. And you're right. There's still a learning curve, even though they make it easy to migrate, right?
Yeah.
You just got me thinking too. There is one thing that VMware, and I mean hyper virtualization kind of has in general that we really can't move past because of the physical to virtual layer translation. And what I mean by that is a real computer has a CPU, has RAM, has memory, network connection. You look at the way VMware presents in vSphere, your virtual servers, you're putting in a CPU, your memory, your
That's
hard
right.
drive, your network. Like it's one to one, but it is truly like the virtualization of one into one.
That's right.
Everyone else is trying to get rid of those parts and pieces, right? Like they're trying to abstract it to that next.
Good
We're
point.
going to abstract into the coding layer. So we'll do like no code as a service. So we're going to abstract into the application layer, and it's containers. But you're losing that core foundational thing, which is the architecture.
Yeah.
And when you look at organizations and businesses as a whole, the architecture is truly what sets a lot of these services apart. It's like, well, what are you running on your back end? Like, how
That's
are
right.
you managing all of your resources, and who's your administrator? I don't think we can get away from that principle unless we actually change the hardware layer, right?
Yes.
Like, and that's not going to happen. Like CPUs aren't going to suddenly become obsolete. Like we kind of figured that out, and it's truly someone needs to come along and be better than VMware, and I don't think anyone has. So just like y'all, I'm very curious what's going to happen, and I think this NVIDIA partnership, this could be honestly even bigger than they've been in the past. Like it truly could be that next level for them. So time will tell.
Yeah.
We'll have to
Yeah.
see.
Yeah. Do you guys think? Do you guys think all of these things increase attack vectors or lessen them?
I think everything increases attack vectors.
Yeah.
You can't buy a Tamagotchi these days without increasing your attack
It's
vector.
so true. I was just thinking about that.
Well,
What about you, Matt?
I think in the near term, well, yes, I agree with what you're saying, but in the near term, it's even going to be accelerated exponentially because of that learning curve.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because once you abandon VMware, if you kind of knew all the ins and outs and edge security and how you handled like, virtual switching and all this type of stuff, and you've got to now go apply that to like Proxmox or Hyper-V even, it's apples and tomatoes, right? It's totally different ways that those different applications work. I mean, I remember with like Hyper-V as an example, could literally back up the virtual networking as part of a
That's
backup,
right.
which was like,
That's
what?
right.
How's that working again?
Yeah.
Whereas vSphere, it's just part of the VMware deployment. So it's a whole different ideology and learning curve. And I feel like until, everything kind of equalizes, you're going to see more, vulnerabilities, more attack vectors, more security holes, because people just don't know,
They
and
don't know
they're
that they're
learning.
leaving that back door open. You mean they
Yeah.
just don't know it's kind of there? And then no, you're right. I mean, the really what we talk about sort of in our everyday jobs, I feel like is going to accelerate the idea that people need to have that safe zone that they know their data is safe because they're going to have to experiment with all these new technologies. And when it comes down to it, did you close the door? Did you lock it? Did the company come up and say, "Oops, this was the wrong lock we gave you"? It's going to be more of a focus on making sure that your data is in a safe place, in a safe storage.
Yep. That's a fantastic point, I think, to to close out on. And I'm curious, for those watching, are you going to VMware Explore this year? We won't be there. So we're going to have to take your word for it on how it goes and watch some of the recaps. But do let us know how it is and if you're going and what you think about the situation. But with that, Matt, I hear you have a pretty cool topic for us this week.
Yeah, I've got to get a plug to our colleague Andy for putting me onto this. I'm going to go ahead and share this with the team. So we've talked about this before, but this is a pretty cool article he shared, which obviously resonates with us because we're all about home automation, and I've got a sad chat over here now about HomeKit versus Nest. So it's a never ending thing. It seems like. I'm a huge proponent for robot vacuums. I've got the Roborock, the S7 Ultra I showed you guys at one point, but it's got the camera, it's got the speaker. I can remotely drive it with my phone, which means theoretically somebody could hack into my Wi-Fi and start driving my robot around. So it is a possibility. So can robots be hacked? I look at this like everything else can be hacked. It's not just a robot vacuum. They could hack your thermostats that are online. They could hack your locks, anything that is IoT, like the Internet of Things. If it's online, if it has an IP address, to me, it's vulnerable in some way. It may be a tiny risk, but as long as it is accessible on a network, it still could be hacked. And I feel like this is the conversation that we get back into when we go back to the joke about the smart toothbrush, right? The Wi-Fi enabled toothbrush. Who wants to hack a toothbrush? Like, what data are you going to get? How long you've brushed? I mean, the point is that's irrelevant. But when you look at something that could gain access to privacy, in someone's home, could be listening with the microphone, eavesdropping, so to speak, that's where it becomes more, of a potential issue. To me, the one thing that I pulled away from this is I do just like what I have in my house. I've got a dedicated network just for IoT devices. I don't allow it to be routable with my LAN, where my computers are connected. It literally just gives it outside internet access. It's got firewalls enabled. With Ubiquity, you can have like intrusion detection turned on. So you got a lot of ways that you can protect yourself from this type of situation. So some of the basic security best practices not only apply to this, but really apply to everything. And we've been harping on this for a while, with passwords. Don't just use the same old password for everything. Make sure that you make it harder to, break into rather than, P@SSW0RD.
I just spell that my password for everybody.
I know, right? Busted. But to me, it's interesting because where does it stop? You got robot vacuums. We've been talking about technology. That's pretty much a staple of the show. It's not going backwards. It's going forwards. So more and more and more things are going to be smart enabled. But, where do you draw the line with security? I feel like in order to embrace the technology, you have to at least assume a little risk in potential security vulnerability, right? There's no way to be 100% unbreakable unless you took your whole house offline. And if you do that, then what can you do, right? All the technology ceases to work. So all we can do is set up our best safeguards, our best security protections, perimeter security, isolation, which to me is a big one here. All your IoT stuff should be on its own network, its own SSID, not routable to your actual LAN. If you've got sensitive stuff like your computers, if you're accessing financial, information, you want all that stuff separated. Easy to do with most routers at the house, and that's my biggest piece of advice here. But yeah, when he shared this, I'm like, oh yeah, brilliant. I'm sure that I'm going to be sitting in there watching a football game during this football season. Here comes my robot just cruising by me, and it wasn't me that was driving it.
That absolutely has been a concern of mine as well. I got one of those the same robots that do the mopping and the vacuuming, and honestly, it works great. And you're right. At any point in time, I can kind of tap in, see where it is, see what it's doing. And before I purchased it, I actually went to Reddit and read about a lot of these things. And a lot of people will tell you that they've even already reversed engineered a lot of these things, and it can be done. some posts will claim that, I think literally one post I read, I've noticed that it focuses in on my girlfriend a lot. It doesn't focus in on me. Some of that I just think is just fodder because it wants to sort of instill a sense of fear out there. Like, I don't know if I believe all of what I read there, but to your point, you're absolutely right. I mean, you have to assume some of those things are happening and just be kind of smart about it. I think to your point, putting them on a separate network really is kind of the way to go there as well. But what's kind of funny is that if you divide it by VLAN or any sort of the IP addressing, some of the things can't talk to each other, and it sort of neuters some of the functionality. So you're sort of left, in the balance of whether I want the technology or not. And that's a tough call. I mean, look, I know at the end of the day, I don't want to mop my floors, so the robot.
I agree, Sterling. I don't want to mop my floors, but I have two of these things and neither of them work. So I've just given up with the robot vacuum. Go ahead, hack it. You'd make it more useful than it is in my house currently, which is not doing the job it's supposed to do. It's now just sitting in my garage unplugged, collecting dust. And they're expensive too.
Yeah.
I don't know. I have a topic to share that I'll get into in a minute. But before we do that, I like the concern here. I do. I appreciate the concern because you're totally right, Matt. Like, it's a gateway. Any home automation is a gateway to get more access. And I think that's the thing we have to continually be aware of. But gosh dang it, like these devices need to be better. I swear, for the price you pay for a robot, it really should vacuum your house and not get stuck in the corner every single time. But I want to transition into something. When I heard you were doing this, Matt, I thought, perfect. I have just the thing to share with y'all. Speaking of robots, there's this new company called Swarmbotics.
Oh, God.
And, like, they can't vacuum my house, but they might be able to kill you from 100 yards away. Ooh. So the irony here is, as I was reading this article earlier, they even say that doing things like robotic taxis and more like robotic trucking, it's really hard because they have to be perfect and precise. Yeah. But with Swarmbotics being used in, warfare technology, you don't have to be as precise. So these folks have basically taken the Roomba concept and have said, hey, let's put 100 of these guys simultaneously out there and swarm them out. And let me just scroll through here, show you some of I did not mean to do that. Show you some of these are like a whole bunch of like little chips they're prepping, and they can do flight, they can do on the ground, and they can swarm. And they've even got some little concept art here, but they say it works better as a swarm than it does as an individual. And that's kind of the challenge with the taxis, the Roombas, any individual robot that's going and doing routing. As a swarm, they're feeding off of all the information that each robot is pulling in and sharing with the other robots. So kind of scary, but also kind of cool.
That's really interesting. That's really, really interesting, especially the fact that they're each sharing the data, and artificial intelligence, can help you sort of take that data in real time. It's kind of scary, definitely kind of cool in the way that, can we make them microscopic and help cure cancer? Because you can go look at, so in other ways besides going out to kind of kill people on a battlefield, I think it could actually be pretty cool. I don't know, man, when you first said that, kind of talking about the Roombas and things, you send 100 of these out, I just see 99 of them getting stuck on the same daggone rock, and they're just going back and forth. Matt, what do you think?
So I think unmanned vehicles in general are the future. Regardless of what we're talking about, whether it's drones that fly, that drive on the ground, that, clean your house. I feel like the technology is evolving so rapidly that it's really going to be disturbing probably in 10 years what we can do with an unmanned vehicle. I mean, it probably already is top secret stuff. We just don't know. But this to me is really cool. My biggest question would be battery life, because to me, when you look at things that are used, especially in the battlefield, that's the biggest fail point. Is like, okay, great, it's cool technology. How often do they have to all come back to the tank, drive up on their charging base and recharge themselves to go out and do the next mission, right? Especially in a military setting. To sweep your floor at night, who cares? It can just go charge up every night. But like, there's bound to be advancements in battery technology that allow these things to run for hours upon hours without needing to be recharged. And to me, that's the more exciting thing, because building the device, the motors, the tires, maybe the fans that cause it to fly, I think that's table stakes at this point. Yeah, we've got the technology to do that, but it's how do we make it sustainable longer without having to be recharged? I think, to me, that's going to be the biggest advancement that we see over the coming years is, the typical retail drone, right? You'll get them that'll fly anywhere from 10 to 12 minutes, maybe to 45 minutes. Anthony, keep me honest, you're the drone guy, but
I've never gone past 10, but
yeah,
mine are a little different.
You've got the racing drone, but like if you go buy like a DJI, Mavic Mini or something, you can go up there and fly the thing for 30 minutes on one battery. But imagine when you could do that for like 6 hours. And like the range and the controller, would let you fly up to 10 miles away. Imagine just cruising for a 10-mile round trip and not worrying about batteries. Like, to me, that's really exciting.
Yeah, completely agree. I think that's true for most technology in general, right? Like, I like where you went with the everything is going to be automated, taxis, it's all getting there, but it is the battery. And I think that extends well beyond the automation, right? Like, if we can figure out how to make a good enough battery to, power the air conditioning in an airplane, and you can store it in the wings kind of thing, like, flights should get cheaper, right? Like, things should become more affordable once batteries get better, because it is the highest draining, like, those things drain fast. The more you use, the faster they drain, the less they last, right? So like, it's a catch-22. You use the battery, it gets worse. You don't use the battery and it keeps its charge. Like, improving that technology, I think we'll see giant leaps in all the other technologies surrounding it. But really good point, Matt. And with that, Sterling, what do you got for us this week?
Last week we talked a little bit about AI and kind of,
on this show?
I know, because we bring it up sort of, every week or whatever, but we talked a little bit about the authenticity of it and sort of how do we know what's been, here or there. And so I actually did some research after it because I was kind of curious as to where we're going to go with this. It's only going to get more prevalent. Turns out that OpenAI actually has a watermarking method that they've already written to detect ChatGPT written content. So all those people right now that are getting over by just dumping your entire job in the ChatGPT and saying, hey, I want you to boil down this recording and then I want you to make me a PowerPoint and then put my name on the bottom and we're ready to go. I've just done my job in 5 minutes. So that may be watermarked here in the future. Now, they already have this out. It's already ready to go today, but they haven't released it. Why haven't they released it? Well, there's some other issues here. They've had some issues where there are certain times when you can actually take the data, copy it, change it into another language, and that loses the watermark. They also have to think about other things like, does ChatGPT falsely mark things as watermarked? And now you've got people who are then accused of forgery and all those types of things, and they actually haven't done anything wrong. So they do say that more times than not, this is right, and it's pretty accurate, but they are worried about the societal recurrences or waves that it could cause as to whether to release it or not. So wanted to kind of get you all's ideas on whether something like this should be released, whether they do it in a couple of ways they talked about here, which was basically model ChatGPT to insert a little bit of an emoji or a watermark so that they can certainly tell certain things, or some other way. Do you think this should exist?
Absolutely. I love that this exists. Interestingly enough, just this week, I use Grammarly to help improve my writing so I don't sound like an idiot all the time. And, one of the nice features that I just noticed, if you click on the little light bulb, it'll say, check for plagiarism or check for AI generated content. and it will highlight parts of your paper or writing that was plagiarized or generated by an AI. Now, I can do that too, just by looking at a LinkedIn post and says, when you go on your journey, like yep, that's AI. That's AI right there.
Yeah.
I could just tell they all start that way. Every AI uses the word journey, and I don't understand it. But personally, I love this. I think this is exactly what we needed. We talked about watermarking before on the show when it comes to AI. It's accountability. It allows us to use the technology responsibly.
Yes.
And, we need this not just for text, but for photos and video, as we're starting to see, because it's only going to get worse with people abusing it and being able to quickly say who generated it, where did it come from, and why. That gets us to an accountability point where I think it makes AI super palatable for us as a society. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, I totally agree. I would love to see them do a solid round of quality control before they just go unleash it, though. I've got plenty of examples from my time in YouTube, and Anthony, you and your wife probably have experienced this too, where you get copyright strikes based on music
all the time,
and it's completely irrelevant. Like it's a bogus claim, and you have to go in there and go through the motions of this isn't true, let the music stay or whatever. Basic example. Right. So it's like, as long as they do this correctly, and I'm 100% for it, like we've already talked about on the previous shows, as long as it works and it doesn't throw up more false positives than actual positives, then, I think it'll be fantastic. And I totally agree. We definitely need this in video, and somehow we do it in audio as well, not just text. Arguably, I feel like the audio and the video is more destructive in some use cases than text. Right. We've seen about all the, the deep fakes, scams that are going on, and that's all video and audio. So I'm a fan of this across the board. Just make sure it works.
Yep. Agree.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah. There needs to be some sort of accountability piece there. But to your point, Matt, you don't want to go accusing people falsely and getting them into losing jobs and things like that has a true cost associated with it.
Correct.
I totally forgot about the copyright strike thing on YouTube, Matt. You brought it up, and
all over the place.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
I mean, you got to make sure it works, right?
Yeah. I mean, you'll get stricken for the most random, off the wall. It's like, I didn't use that. Why? Really? Why do you think that's in there? Like, it's not precise, but boy, howdy, does it try.
So I've got two other real quick things to share as we wrap up. I know we're kind of at time. These aren't long topics, but since I still have my sharing turned on, I want to throw up a cool pic that we took. So this is a picture from the awesome. Very first VMware Explorer that Object First went to. This was out in San Francisco last time, and we actually went go-karting, which was epic. You were there, Anthony. I was there. You can see our CEO, David Bennett. He's on the podium as well. That was an amazing event. Like when we went to VMware Explorer out there was so much buzz, people coming around. And this is, correct me if I'm wrong, this was before we actually even went live, wasn't it, Anthony? This was pre-live, and we're out there showcasing what we're about to roll out, and everybody was super excited. And then, after we did this awesome team building event, go-karting. So that was fun. And the other thing I just wanted to show, let me turn the sharing off here. So we talk about robot vacuums. I've got the Roborock, the nice one, and how the technology is advancing. Let me show you the dumbest one to ever be designed. This is the Dyson, the Eye. This was like one of the very first Dyson robots that they created, and it's got the little dustbin, that comes out right there. It's got one little eye on the top, and and you can see it's dusty because the stupid thing doesn't work. It's got a couple little sensors right here, and a couple little side sensors like up in there. You talk about getting stuck. To me, what's wild, and the reason I bring this up is, the way the Dyson Eye works is when it comes off the base, it just starts doing expansions. It just does essentially squares, and they keep getting bigger until it hits a wall, and then it'll adjust itself. It has no knowledge of like, this is the living room, this is the kitchen, this is the den. It has no knowledge on, is this hardwood, is this carpet? Like, it's just dumb, right? And all it does is vacuum. The only thing it's got going for it is it's got the best suction of any robot that I've seen. So Dyson,
We know Dyson has
they
that
carry
nailed.
the torch in vacuum cleaners, and they
Yeah.
do have a new one out that I've heard is way better than this one. But just talking about technology advancing, right? This one is dumb. The Roborock that I've got, we've talked about it before on the show before. It's a mop and a vacuum. It's got LiDAR. It's got the microphone. It's got the speaker. It's got all the sensors everywhere. You literally let it go auto map. It'll build a rough schematic of your house. You go in there and you can create wall dividers. You can put furniture on the map. You can say it's hardwood. You can say it's carpet. You can even pick the direction that the hardwood is running, so that when it mops with the lines where the hardwood connects,
Wow.
as opposed to going across the grain where it'll
Wow.
leave trash in between. I mean, the technology is crazy, right? And I've had this thing for a couple of years. So imagine where we'll be in 10 more years. I mean,
Yeah.
they'll probably have legs where they can walk up the stairs
Oh,
and do
guaranteed.
Ooh, that'd
multi-floor
be
houses.
sick.
Guaranteed.
That I'm here for.
Right?
Ours, like we had the iRobot Roomba 980, and it just refused to dock. Like we bought the nice docking station, it sucked all the crap out of it. Like it worked for a week, and then we called customer support. And they're like, "Have you tried updating it?" And we're like, "Yeah, duh." But it never worked. Like biggest waste of money. So I do want one. I want a good one. So if y'all got the Rex, I will gladly take it.
Or if anybody out there listening, if you guys have something that you really like that you use at home, kick it over here, because we got to get Anthony something to clean his floors.
I just don't want the ones that swarm and have guns. Not those.
Yeah.
100 of them all over your carpet.
Those don't belong in the home.
No,
Well,
what was
gentlemen,
that? No
it's-
launching paintballs at people when they break in.
Yeah.
Yeah. It released, what was that? The condensed fog that it released? Yeah.
That's security.
You got to watch the
Damn.
previous episodes to learn about the home attack
man.
camera.
Imagine the false positive. You got to repaint your whole house.
Oh man.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, gentlemen,
Anyways.
it's always a pleasure talking to y'all, and the topics you brought this week, fantastic as usual. And thanks to our audience for tuning in and watching. We hope you learned something new today and had some fun. As per usual, we are sponsored by Object First UPI, best storage for Veeam. If you ever need to know how to make your Veeam backups immutable, talk to any of us. We can make it happen. Thanks, Matt and Sterling, as always, for joining me. And for the rest of y'all, stay weightless, stay frictionless, stay zero gravity. Oh, and next week, we're talking about football, so I will not be here. But if there's ever been a reason to tune in, that's
I
it.
can't wait.
It's gonna be next week.
We'll see you
See y'all
guys next week.
Bye, y'all.